Hi everyone, we are going to make a presentation about the topic nature births versus C-section, and we have taken the side of nature births. My name is Arwen.
My name is Josephine.
And our presentation is based on the situation that the mother is free to make choices whether to give the baby nature birth or due to C-section surgery. We exclude the special cases that the mother is highly recommended by the doctor to do the C-section surgery because the health of the pregnant mother is the first priority. Here's our outline of the presentation. First, I will give some basic information and problems of current situation about nature births, and then Josephine will introduce some concept C-section, and then I will introduce the pros of nature births, and Josephine will give the conclusion and further measures. Then we do some research on the internet and got the data of some C-section rate in different areas in a study published in 2017. The C-section rate in the UK is 26.5%, and in Australia is 32.3%, while in China is 41%. However, we found on the WHO website that the international healthcare community suggests that the ideal C-section rate within the country is from 10% to 15%. And a section of WHO statement also says the cesarean sections are effective in saving maternal and infant lives, but only when they are required for medically indicated reasons, as also applies to what I say in the first slide. And the second is at the population level, cesarean section rates higher than 10% are not associated with reductions in maternal and newborn mortality rates. And next, Josephine will introduce us about the risks of C-section.
Now let's talk about the risks of C-section. Firstly, we'll talk about the risks for the mother, and then we'll talk about the risks for the child. The research showed that adverse outcomes in low-risk pregnancies occur more frequently in cesarean section deliveries, which is 9.2%. However, in vaginal deliveries, it is 8.6%. I have read about a research paper which making a comparison between the risk of vaginal delivery and cesarean delivery. Here's the picture. As you can see here, the risk of different outcomes is higher in cesarean delivery than those in vaginal delivery, such as severe morbidity and mortality, maternal mortality, and amniotic fluid embolism. This picture suggests that the risk of death increase in C-section. There's a special circumstance that if a cesarean is performed in an emergency, the risk of surgery may be increased. Even after the C-section surgery, there are also many other risks for the mother. For example, the wound infections occur after cesarean sections at a rate of 3 to 15%. Now imagine that here's a mother who had a C-section before and she wants to give birth to another baby now. And she wants to choose natural birth. However, it's so sad that the truth is that she is more likely to have problems in this pregnancy because some research shows that the pregnancies after C-section may have more problems. And here I will introduce a word called VBAC. VBAC refers to a vaginal birth after cesarean section. The VBAC will have a higher risk of uterine rupture, which is 5 per 1,000, and blood transfusion or endometritis, which is 10 per 1,000, and prenatal death of the child, which is 0.25 per 1,000. And here's an interesting thing happened. It is really surprising that those mothers will change their mind. 20% to 40% of planned VBAC attempts end in cesarean section being needed. Those mothers were forced to take C-section because of the risks in the surgery. Now let's come to the part of the risks for the baby after C-section. There are many possible risks for the child after C-section. I will just put some examples for these risks for the part. The first one is wet lung, because infant is not expelled by the pressure of contractions during labor, so the fluid in lungs cannot be squeezed out. The second one is early delivery and complications. The due date is important for the child development. However, the due date calculation may be inaccurate sometimes. Even a few days before 39 weeks may increase complications in the baby's future. And the third one is higher infant mortality risks. And the last one is worse health outcomes later in life. The baby may have developmental problems, including some mental diseases such as autism and hyperactivity in the future. Now let's have a short conclusion for the last part of C-section. C-section has a higher rate of maternal and neonatal mortality and morbidity. Now let's invite Arwen to introduce the advantages of natural birth.
So you guys may ask a question, why to give a natural birth? But I want to ask you another question, why not a natural birth? I think nearly every woman would consider the pain of the labor, but based on some research, the pain of contractions of the uterus in labor is valuable. And an expert of childbirth, Lothian, says, in a very real sense, the pain of each contraction becomes a guide for the laboring woman. This is because the contractions of the uterus had a connection with the oxytocin. When the contractions become stronger, the cervix stretches and opens, and the babies move lower, eventually moving down the natural canal. And with each contraction, pain will send a signal to the brain and the oxytocin is released. And with the release of oxytocin, the contractions will increase in intensity, and as the pain of contractions increases, more oxytocin will be released and the contractions become harder. The mother can also generate what is so-called nature's narcotic. The nature narcotic is very opposite to medical narcotic. So how it is generated? When the labor progresses and the pain increases, the mother can produce something called endorphins. And endorphins is very similar to the morphine, but it's much more potent than morphine. And when endorphins are released, the result is a decrease in painception. It is quite naturally, so it is called nature's narcotic. And the rising level of endorphins will lead to a shift from a thinking rational mindset to a more instinctive one. And endorphins will also create a dreamlike state. And this will help mother of giving birth to the baby. So I will introduce some advantages of nature births. And the first is shorter recovery. And an advantage to giving the nature birth is shorter recovery. If a mother chooses to give a nature birth, that the recovery and hospital stay is typically 24 to 48 hours. But for C-section, the stay can be extended to several days and even longer. And the second advantage is some physical benefits. And the first is vaginal birth can help squeeze fluid out of the baby's lungs, so this will help reduce the incidence of breathing problems of the baby. And also during the nature birth, baby will receive some helpful bacteria, and which will help the baby's immune system and protect the intestinal tract. And the third advantage is earlier contact between the family and the baby. After a mother giving nature birth, mom and baby will be able to have contact with each other very soon, and also skin-to-skin contact and breastfeeding is allowed very soon than a C-section surgery. Now let's take a look at the example of Kate Middleton. Kate has given birth to 3 babies in total: Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. She all chose to give the baby nature birth, and shortly after she gave nature birth to her baby, she wore high heels to meet reporters outside the hospital, with her uterus hadn't been retracted yet. And this is a strong evidence to support my first advantage of nature birth in the last slide. And next, let's welcome Josephine to give us the conclusion of our presentation.
Now let's come to the conclusion part. In short, although both natural birth and C-section are risky, the risk of C-section is higher, and natural birth has many strengths. So we are for natural birth unless there's some special circumstances where the mother is in danger when having operation and the doctor recommends to take C-section. We suggest, if not necessary, the mother please don't choose C-section just because you want to ease your pain or want to choose a good day to give birth to your baby. It may cause big changes in your baby's life and your life in the future. That's all for our presentation today. Thanks for listening. And here are our references.